Recently, I gave a talk to a group covering the local history of Hamsey Green. And there was something that came to light on there that piqued my interest. I found a map from around about 1900, and it made reference to police station horse patrol on Limpsfield Road, the Sanderstead Metropolitan Police Station. And it was approximately straight ahead of me now. Many years ago, this was just farmland. King's Wood itself is quite old, it's an ancient woodland, and in terms of the location of the police station, it lines up with the kind of grid pattern that we have in Kingswood. So you can see there's these sections of woods that go back to the hunting days. One of the key routes from where the keeper's cottage is in the wood itself, it lines up completely. So we can see how it made perfect sense for there to be that location for the police station. And also it made sense that it was a mounted police station, because it was farmland. It was the best way of getting around and to basically do what police needed to do in those days. And actually the coverage of that location, it covered Sanderstead, Ken, Lee, Warningham, Whiteleaf. So that's the location. But what about this local hero? What I'm going to do now is pop along to Sanderstead and continue the story there. So, about Benjamin Beeson. He was born in 1830 in West Winch, which is near King's Lynn in Norfolk, the son of a farm labourer. And up until the age of 11, he didn't have any formal education. The 1851 census has Benjamin in West Winch, but not in the family home. Interestingly, he's in the same accommodation as a police officer, which would obviously be part of the story further down the line. But a year later, in 1852, he took the Queen's shilling. He enlisted in the 11th Hussars, or Prince Albert's Own, as it was known by its full title. Come 1854, the Allies were in the Crimean War, and Benjamin and his regiment were to take part. And importantly for this story, Benjamin took part in the charge of the Light Brigade on the 25th of October, 1854. There was a lot of miscommunication going on. Lord Raglan had a great view at the top of the hill of the whole valley. There were Russian troops defending on the left and right hills overlooking the valley, and the target was the Russian army at the end of the valley. And through a combination of leaders that didn't really get on with one another, and poor communication, and no real challenge to confirm the order, they were told to just make for the Russian army at the end of the valley, a distance of about a mile, mile and a quarter, and pretty much told that there was going to be no retreat option. You just had to go for your target. So they advanced, and almost immediately the cannon fire came, left and right, and ahead. And in a matter of minutes, they were right in the thick of battle. And the casualty numbers bore out just how horrific it was. The numbers are different depending on source, but approximately 600 entered the charge. Around about 100 to 140 killed, a good 170 to 200 maybe injured. 375 horses were killed, and it was awful. In fact, they actually charged past the Russians that were at the end of the valley, and then realised they had to turn around and come back and go through them, and they were attacked again. And really the only difference that led to the survival of not only Benjamin Beeson, but of thankfully other soldiers, was that the French army had managed to take out one of the Russians defending one of the hills. So without that, it would have been even worse. From what I understand, Benjamin Beeson came out without a scratch, although he did fight in other campaigns in the Crimean War, and he wasn't so fortunate then. But he was awarded medals and clasps. So you have like the clasp that goes on the band of the medal. So that was for the Alma, Inkerman, Balaclava and Sebastopol campaigns. Now the other thing, of course, is that the Crimean War is famous for the emergence of Florence Nightingale. The conditions in the hospitals were terrible. Sanitation, organisation, standards and that kind of thing. And really that was where Florence Nightingale became famous, because it was those organisational skills that she added to it. Over time, you know, things were improved, and in more modern nursing, they've been put into proper standards. In 1864, age 34, he was discharged from the army. And in my research, I was fortunate enough to find the discharge paper. So this was the start of Benjamin Beeson, the Sanderstead-based local policeman. That said, He did spend quite a bit of time in the police service in other parts of London. In 1868, age 38, he married Jane Jenkins at St Margaret's in Westminster. Now, I think I'm correct in understanding that this is St Margaret's next to the Palace of Westminster, so quite a prominent church. Some very famous people got married there. The entry on the 1881 census is quite amusing. We've got Benjamin living with his wife, 5 children, along with Police Sergeant Broadbridge, his wife, 3 children and a lodger. That would have been quite cosy in that accommodation along there at Limpsfield Road. In 1883, Benjamin's wife died. She was only 45, and she was buried here at All Saints in Sanderstead. And he was then responsible for bringing up the children, maintaining the household. He was still working as a policeman at this stage as well. In 1892, age 62, he retired from the police force. Now we know also that in regular periods he would attend the reunion dinners for the 11th Hussars and the Charge of the Light Brigade, ex-servicemen. He would also occasionally attend the Lord Mayor's show in London on his white horse. Now in the 1901 census, when he's aged 71, he's shown as living at South Croydon. So this is almost opposite the Red Deer pub, just as you go up the hill. So he'd moved away from the police station post-retirement, still stayed close to Sanderstead. I think he obviously developed roots here, connections here, and it made sense to retain a presence in the area. I also found that in 1904 he attended one of the regimental ex-servicemen or veterans dinners at the Stationers' Hall in London, and we have a photo here. Now we've got his name on the surround of the main photo. The actual image of him is quite blurry. I don't know exactly when, but there's also reports that he suffered a nervous breakdown and spent some time at Croydon Mental Hospital, which of course is Wallingham Park Hospital, just 2-3 miles down the road from here. We won't know the detail of that. He would have gone through various life changes, possibly PTSD. He'd lost his wife, he was coming to terms with old age. The very participation in the battle, I think, would have left a mark that would never go away, I'm sure. And then he went to live with his son, Thomas, who was head gardener at a large house in Headley, near Epsom. And that's where he stayed until he sadly passed away on Christmas Day, 1908. The funeral cortege was accompanied from West Croydon Station by a police band and a detachment of the 4th Queen's Regiment. Sadly, the 11th Hussars were prevented from attending by really bad weather. Coffin made of polished elm with brass fittings and lined with swansdown, and transported in a glass carriage drawn by 2 black horses. And 2 horse carriages were also provided for friends and relatives. So it would have been a very impressive sight coming up Sanderstead Hill. On arrival at the church, it was met by a bearer party formed from the Grenadier, Irish and Coldstream Guards based fairly locally at Caterham, and he was buried with full military honours and to the strains of the last post that he would have heard so many times on his military service. And here we have where Benjamin Beeson was laid to rest. In loving memory of Jane, wife of Benjamin Beeson, who died October the 9th, 1883, aged 45 years, he giveth his beloved sleep. Also of Benjamin Beeson, husband of the above, who was called to rest on Christmas Day 1908, aged 78 years, one of the survivors of the famous charge at Balaclava, 1854. And then a quote from the famous Tennyson poem wrote very shortly after that infamous battle. When will their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made, noble 600. When I carry out research into the films that I make, it's often a lot of effort for not always too much reward. In other words, you kind of know the story, but you've got to prove it before you can tell it. And with this particular story, There were some good references and good leads in the Bourne Society publications, local publications, which I thoroughly recommend. But when I started to go online and look through other sources of information available to me, I was so pleasantly surprised by the richness of information that became available and enabled me to tell the story of this great man. So, firstly, thank you for watching the video. Really appreciate that. But also a huge thank you for Benjamin and people like him. You know, the guy had quite a basic and poor upbringing in many ways, certainly in terms of education. He joined the army, he fought for his country. He then provided service through the police. He got to be known in the local community on the back of that with his famous white horse. And after service, when he was retired, he was attending dinners and helping with raising funds. Had his own setback or two along the way, and obviously tragically his wife died at only 45 years of age. But he was a true local hero, and I feel in some ways I know the man, as strange as that sounds, but I got very close to his life story, and hopefully I've told it in a reasonable way here, and in a way that people can remember Benjamin Beeson of Sanderstead for many years to come. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.